Rutger McGroarty spoke with the media for the first time yesterday. And my main takeaway, we'll get into all of our takeaways, but my main takeaway is it was a, quote, happy to be here fest. It was I'm very excited for this new opportunity. I'm excited to be in Pittsburgh. I'm excited to play with Sidney Crosby. If it ever happens, he says, as if it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to play at some point on a line with Sidney Crosby. But outside of that, I thought he had a couple of interesting comments and a couple of newsworthy takes and quotes that came out of that 7.5 minutes at UPMC Sports Complex up in Cranberry. But let me ask you first, because I gave my thoughts yesterday on Tip of the Ice-Burgh Live. What were your thoughts on McGroarty's first press conference?
Nothing stuck out to me. There was, like you said, it was the I'm just happy to be here. It's a hockey person trying to answer hockey questions. Yeah. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to contribute. Happy to, get into a new situation and excited to get into a new situation. One of the quotes that got me was off the jump was him saying, whenever he was asked about the winning culture here, that he likes winning and he wants to win and is excited to have that opportunity here. Buddy, have you seen the standings the last 2 seasons? First, as a joke. Secondly, I get what he's saying. It's there has been definitely a culture of winning in Pittsburgh for the last 16 seasons, 17, 18 seasons, 20 years essentially with Sidney Crosby in the lineup. There has been that that drive of you're here to win, you're here to be successful, and it's going to be up to him to help bring that back a little bit. And I think that one stuck out mostly because obviously the way the Penguins have gone the last few years, it hasn't been as successful. It hasn't been full of winning. But that's the fact that the culture of winning is still sticking around, that aura and that's still here. That means that he feels it. He feels there's something that can happen here, and he's going to try and continue being a successful player. He's going to have to do it in Pittsburgh now. So I'd say that quote stuck out because it sounded weird whenever you consider where the Penguins have been, but knowing that with Crosby still around and still kicking, with Malkin still around, with Letang, Carlson, like we just discussed, the goaltenders, they can pick it up. There can be a chance of winning here, and he can be a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's something that it seems like he's an insanely competitive guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's taking that as a challenge. Like, hey, they haven't won the last 2 years. I'm 20 years old. He's won in Michigan. He's won in World Juniors, was the captain of the gold medal team, which we've talked about in 2024. So this is a guy that is insanely competitive. And it seems like he's taking that as a challenge. Like, this is a winning culture. Seems like we haven't done that the last couple of years. I think it's about time that they start doing it again. Now, again, can he carry them to that? That's a lot to ask a 20-year-old. It helps when you have some Hall of Famers on the roster, obviously, is including the biggest winner in all of like hockey history in Sidney Crosby. But I did like the confidence of saying, listen, I'm a winner. I like winning things, and this is where I want to do it. And I think that there's a culture here to do it. So I liked that as well. My big takeaways, one, threw it in there, comfortable playing on both wings. Mike Sullivan will absolutely love that. Whether they actually test that out, whether they actually utilize that, different story, especially with a young guy. You kind of want to protect him a little bit. But saying that he's comfortable on both wings, that's good. Something I hadn't thought about. I thought he was left wing center. If he can get in there on the right side, especially considering, the one other player that the Penguins have been not rumored to be going after, but we've talked about potentially looking at as a target, and Nick Robertson, who's a left winger, it helps, especially if you trade Ricard Raquel, that you essentially have that guy that can be top 6, bottom 6, left wing, right wing. It's always nice to have a guy like that. And the other one, he's playing in the prospects tournament. Braden Yeager was slotted to play in it. So essentially he just takes Yeager's spot on the roster. So with that, we're going to see him playing in some game action in 2 weeks for the Pittsburgh Penguins. The question I have for you, Horwat, is who do you want to see him play with that weekend? Who do you want him to be on a line with that weekend whenever they go up to Buffalo?
Oh, that's tough. There's some good names too. Both Vasily Ponomarev and Ville Koivunen. And by the way, mind you, I haven't looked at the roster of who's playing. So if I say a name that's not on there, shout it out and I will excuse myself. But so far, those two, Vasily Ponomarev and Ville Koivunen, are both obvious choices to center McGroarty in the situation because all three of those names are guys that can be important pieces to the Penguins' future.
Mm-hmm.
Getting in that mindset of growing a chemistry now, getting it in early, is a great way to start that sort of process of looking to what the future can be. Tristan Brose is also an interesting name if that lines up, because Tristan Brose, I mean, not that he's a dark horse to make the lineup or anything, but it definitely need to keep an eye on going into the following seasons. This year may not come for him, but next year could be a big year for him, especially if he takes his first run at professional hockey in the AHL and succeeds and and excels. Starting it with Rutger McGroarty at this prospect camp or at this prospect tournament could be huge.
Yeah, Tristan Brose is the guy that I circled here. One, because they're both college hockey guys. Brose obviously going Minnesota to Denver, winning a national championship last year. McGroarty coming out of Michigan. And two, I mean, they've already been on the ice together, right? Earlier this week, it was Brose, it was McGroarty. Throw in Sergei Murashov was out there. Throw in Cody Glass was out there. Glass won't be at the prospect tournament, but those other three will. So maybe you throw Brose and McGroarty, similar styles, coming from a similar background in college hockey. And then the other player I want to see is kind of a Prospects Challenge MVP last year. Opened a lot of eyes, was still pretty good in training camp, and then kind of faded away as the season got underway. Avery Hayes. Maybe put Avery Hayes on that right side. Hayes, Brose, and McGroarty. I'd like to see that. I understand they play the same wing, but I'd love to see McGroarty take a few shifts with Tanner Howe, because those two, the way they play the game together, it would be similar to, they're not fighters, but it'd be like the Penguins version of the Bash brothers in this tournament. So I'd like to see those two play, get a little chippy, get under the skin of the opponents, and put in a bunch of goals. So if they can get them on the ice at the same time, maybe some power play opportunities, I'd love to see those two share the ice. So that's one thing I'm looking at. But I think Brose is the big one that I'm circling, as him and McGroarty should probably, share the ice a lot, especially if you're looking for Brose to come up and eventually be a big piece as a center iceman.
It's a fantastic pick too. It's like you mentioned it, the connection of NCAA hockey, which breeds them into a similar style, breeds them into similar mindsets. They'll be able to read each other off that. If I'm not mistaken, I might be. Didn't Denver go through Michigan on their way to winning the championship? I could be wrong about that. But I remember Michigan losing in heartbreaking fashion to someone, and I know Tristan Brose scored 2 overtime game winners in that tournament. I just forget who they were against.
Yeah, I know he did it against BU and Macklin Celebrini.
Yep.
But let me look and see who else they went through. They went through Boston College in the final, BU in the semifinal, Cornell in the second round, and Massachusetts in the first round. So Michigan was on the other side of the bracket and were eliminated by Boston College in the Frozen Four.
Got it. That's what it was. Okay. But, both playing in that tournament too. It's being around each other, getting to know each other in that sort of sense. That's a good little partnership that could be, for the Penguins down the line, pretty fruitful, pretty successful.
The last thing I'll mention about this, and this wasn't from the press conference, this came out earlier today from NHL Jersey Numbers. Josh Getzoff of the Penguins obviously retweeted it. He's expected to wear number 2. When you look at number 2 throughout the history of Penguins hockey, there's 22 of them. The first person to ever wear it, Leo Boivin. There's a name. Other names that have worn it over the years. Phil Bourque for a season. Before he became the old 2-9er, he was just the old 2 in 1984. Jimmy Pack, Joseph Melikar, Hal Gill, Matt Niskanen, and most recently, Chad Ruedel. What are your thoughts on Rutger McGroarty donning the number 2 potentially in his first season as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins?
It's a lot of defensemen there.
Well, it's a single digit number.
It's fascinating to see. It's interesting because I think Will Smith with San Jose is also wearing number 2. And it's weird seeing forwards. It's like football nowadays. And the NHL has never really had that rule anyway, or that mindset of your number has to correlate with your position, this, that, the other. The only thing that's ever correlated to in hockey is the goalies with number 1. Forwards traditionally have not worn number 2. 3 and up we've seen. 4 and up maybe. But this is a new little wrinkle that is going to be fascinating. Will Smith's wearing number 2 in San Jose. Rutger McGroarty might be wearing number 2 in Pittsburgh. It'll be interesting. It'll take the eyes some getting used to. I'm still getting used to linemen wearing number 6 in football. So
that doesn't happen as much. I mean, defensive linemen, yes. It'll be weird seeing like Patrick Queen wearing number 6.
See, it's fascinating, and I like it. I like the idea of just who cares. It's like in the grand scheme of things, who cares? It is just a number. Like let the guys wear whatever they want, wherever they play.
That's what it is. We are trained to be like, that doesn't fit. That's not where that's supposed to be. Like that's number 2 is supposed to be a big, like Hal Gill, like 6'8", and just laying on the ground, getting pucks smashed into his face by slap shots and being like, all right, that's cool. Like, all right. I mean, hey,
I forget who it is. I think it's Seth Rohrabaugh always tweets it whenever a new number comes in like that. He's like, my eyes are going to need to adjust to watching. I forget who it was exactly. There's like one where it's like a defense was taking a forward number. Why is so-and-so pinching so much? Oh, because it's somebody else. That's, you know how often we're going to think that whenever we see Rutger McGroarty down below the goal line or the net front. Like, what's Chad Ruhwedel doing down there? Oh, wait. It's going to take some adjusting and getting used to. But I'm fascinated by seeing, just the freeness of numbers. If it's not a legitimate written rule, I want to see a skater wear number 1.